Okay, hi everybody. We're just going to have a quick recording of this meeting. So I've waited until everybody's left. No one's on this recording with me. So that's all good. And I'm going to show you how to write a really good end to our Stone Age boy story. So it's a lot of what we did in the live Google Meet, but just in case you missed it, we're going to have another go now. Okay, so the first thing we need to do when we're writing the ending of a story is to think about what we wrote yesterday. So yesterday, and I'm going to find it on my desktop. My desktop is a little bit crowded, but never mind. It's this middle part here. Yesterday, we wrote the middle of the story, and we wrote about what happened to our boy, he's called Bob, when he was stuck in the Stone Age. So we talked about him meeting a saber-toothed tiger. We talked about him meeting Then they went back to their camp, and Bob learned how to hunt, and they hunted a deer. They threw spears at it, and the deer fell over, and there was a massive big feast. They munched on yummy kidneys, I'm not sure they go together, and roasted meat. The next day, took Bob to a massive dark cave. Made a torch and lit it. The children went into the cave. Bob was amazed. In the flickering light of the torch flames, he could see amazing cave paintings. They almost looked real. Suddenly, something moved. Something was lurking in the shadows. But what could it be? So that's our cliffhanger where we're going to start today. So, let's start with that sentence. Something moved in the shadows. Now I'm going to repeat that sentence, but I'm going to add a little bit more detail. By doing this, it helps me to build up suspense. I'm not telling people what's actually in the shadows, and we both know it's a bear, but our readers don't know that. So let's try and frighten them a little bit. Something moved in the shadows. Something big and hairy. I'm going to repeat it again, and this time I'm going to add another adjective. After that, I'm going to tell the reader what it is. Just as I've got them scared enough to think it might be a monster, I'm going to pounce and say, it was a bear. Okay? Something big and hairy. Something big and hairy and scary. In fact, I'm not going to tell them it's a bear. I'm going to tell them what Bob and could hear. And, what sound do bears make? They make a growl. I wonder how I can describe that growl to make it sound really scary, because remember, my aim right now is to terrify my readers. I want hairy, something big and hairy and scary. Low, that means quiet. A low, vicious, menacing growl echoed around the cave. Now I'm going to use a 3ED sentence. That's a sentence structure that starts with 3 words that describe how someone's feeling, and they all end in ED. So I'm going to use shocked, terrified, scared, the children peered into the darkness. Now I'm going to use a simile to tell me what their hearts felt like. Their hearts were racing as fast as a runner running a race. Okay, let's see if I can make that sound a bit better. Helps if I put a capital letter in the right place. Their hearts were beating so fast that they felt like they were about to explode. So I've changed my sentence a little bit. Okay, and I want to show the readers that the children are really, really, really scared. Now I'm going to start a new paragraph because I want to make people jump. And I'm going to use the word suddenly because it makes it sound like a surprise. Suddenly! Okay, that's how we read the word suddenly. Really quickly. Suddenly, the children saw some sharp teeth. They saw two small black eyes. They saw lots of brown, grizzly fur. Okay, so now I've described my bear. So people are starting to get an idea, or maybe it's not a monster, but it is something pretty terrifying. Suddenly, the children saw some sharp teeth. They saw two small black eyes. They saw lots of brown, grizzly fur. I'm going to put in some speech now. So I've started a new line for my speech because when we use speech, we always start a new line. And I'm going to make my boy stammer. He's going to go, bear! Okay, so instead of writing bear, like this, I'm going to use a B with some ellipsis, another B with ellipsis, and then bear. Bear. So that's how we'd read that, okay? Bob stammered, because he's stammering. Bear. Now I'm going to start a new line because Bob has finished talking, and I'm going to say what the children did. The children turned and ran as fast as lightning. Okay? Unfortunately, because we need to get Bob home now, and we know in the story that Bob got home by falling down a hole. Okay, that's how he got to the Stone Age, and that's how he got back to his home. So, unfortunately, poor Bob is going to have to fall down a hole. Luckily for him, he's not going to get eaten by a bear, though, so pros and cons. Unfortunately, Bob tripped and fell. Not tripped and fell, that's not a word. Unfortunately, Bob tripped and fell. He felt himself falling down, down, down. And now I'm going to repeat a bit of the story that I used on Monday because I kind of want it to sound the same. I want my two falling down the holes to mirror each other. I want them to be the same. And that's kind of it's called symmetry. And lots of really good writers use symmetry in their books to make things sound a bit weird and a bit like something strange is going on. Okay, so it's quite a nice device to use to wrap up a story, if you can do. And we have got the perfect opportunity because he needs to go in a portal both times. So I'm going to use the same words that I used on Monday, and you can check back on your writing. Luckily for me, because I wrote it, I still remember. Okay, unfortunately, Bob tripped and fell. He felt himself falling down, down, down. Dancing colours swirled before his eyes before he hit his head with a sickening crack. Okay, so now he's fallen down the hole and he's no longer in the Stone Age. Because he's no longer in the Stone Age, I'm going to start a new paragraph. So our paragraphs are helping me to organise my thoughts. I'm keeping all the same thoughts in one paragraph and starting a new paragraph when I change maybe location, or when I want to surprise someone. Okay, so I changed my paragraph when I wanted people to notice the bear properly. And I'm changing my paragraph now because, well, we're not in the Stone Age anymore. We're back in the modern day. So, when Bob sat up, or in fact, Miss Meadows, what are you doing with these capital letters? Capital letters go at the start of a sentence, not in the middle. When Bob woke up, he sat up, rubbed his head, and looked around for but she wasn't there. Now, I've just broken one of the rules of good writing. I always tell you, never ever use a but at the start of a sentence. It is not a sentence if you use but at the start. However, sometimes good writers break some of the rules. Okay, that's a secret we don't like to tell people. But actually, sometimes you have to break the rules because now people are going to really notice that sentence. Okay? I don't do it a lot, maybe once in a whole story, but once I'm giving you permission to start a sentence with but. Okay? So when Bob woke up, he sat up, rubbed his head, and looked around for but she wasn't there. Instead, oh, what has happened to my font? Crazy. Instead, he found that everything had changed. He looked around and he found that he was back home. Now, I don't want to tell the readers that Bob is happy. I want to show them, okay? It's dead easy to say Bob was happy, but it's a lot trickier and a lot more impressive if we can show that emotion. So how can I show someone is happy? If you're happy, what do you start to do? Good, you start to smile, okay? So, a big grin slowly crept across Bob's face. He was home. Now, if I'd been stuck in the Stone Age for ages and ages and I hadn't seen my parents in about a month, and then suddenly I realised I was home, I think I would be running to my parents' house. So let's see. I could just put he ran to his parents' house, but that's a bit boring. I'm going to start my sentence with a simile, and there's a challenge for you. Can you start a sentence with a simile? Don't forget to add a comma after it. As fast as lightning, Bob ran home. Excitedly, and there's my adverbial opening, my frenzied adverbial. Excitedly, he told his parents about what had happened. Now, did Bob's parents believe him? No. Would your parents believe you? I don't think my parents would believe me either. His parents didn't believe him, but Bob knew that it was real. He looked everywhere for but he couldn't find her. Now, I'm going to do a bit of a time jump, okay? I want to talk about Bob as an adult, so let's skip a bit. I'm going to start a new paragraph. When Bob grew, whoops, spell it right, miss. When Bob grew up, he decided to be an archaeologist. Now, an archaeologist is somebody who has the job of going to historical sites, so places of interest, maybe somewhere like Pompeii that we talked about last half term, or somewhere like Rome or Egypt or Greece, or even places in England as well, because we have lots of Stone Age and other periods of time buried deep in our ground. And an archaeologist's job is to find these sites and to start digging, and they use things that look like paintbrushes and like little tools and stuff, and they had to brush all the sand and the dirt away, and they see what they can find, and from those artifacts we're able to learn a lot about history. So that was Bob's job, and he was focusing mainly on the Stone Age. So when Bob grew up, he decided to be an archaeologist. He was always looking for clues about and her people. He couldn't decide whether it was a dream. Maybe it was, or maybe not. So with that sentence, maybe it was, or maybe not, I finished my story. So that's the end of actually writing it, but that's not the end of the writing process. Once you've written your story, you need to go back. And a good writer always goes back. They always read what they've written. Okay, so let's go quickly. Something moved in the shadows. Something big and hairy. Something big and hairy and scary. A low, vicious, menacing growl echoed around the cave. Shocked, terrified, scared, the children peered into the darkness. Their hearts were beating so fast that they felt like they were about to explode. Suddenly, the children saw some sharp teeth. They saw 2 small black eyes. They saw lots of brown, grisly fur. Bear! Bob stammered. The children turned and ran as fast as lightning. Unfortunately, Bob tripped and fell. He felt himself falling down, down, down. Dancing colours swirled before his eyes before he hit his head with a sickening crack. When Bob woke up, he sat up, rubbed his head and looked around for but she wasn't there. Instead, he found that everything had changed. He looked around and he found that he was back home. A big grin slowly crept across Bob's face. He was home! As fast as lightning, Bob ran home. Excitedly, he told his parents about what had happened. His parents didn't believe him, but Bob knew that it was real. He looked everywhere for but he couldn't find her. When Bob grew up, he decided to be an archaeologist. He was always looking for clues about and her people. He couldn't decide whether it was a dream. Maybe it was, or maybe not. Fantastic! So I'm really happy with my piece of writing, except for this little bit here. I'm going to go back up to it because I've got home written here and home written here. And it doesn't sound right. He looked around and found that he was back home. A big grin slowly crept across Bob's face. He was home. So I'm going to change one of these words. He was back. Now it sounds different to one another, and it sounds a lot better in my opinion. So I'm going to save my work. Saved it up there. And that's the end. So if I was you, I'd be checking back for full stops, capital letters, spelling mistakes. I know that I've not made any, but always best to be safe. Check. And good work. I can't wait to read your stories, guys. So I will see you very soon for story time at 3 o'clock. Bye.